Hana Kim walked through the long hallway that led to the council chambers. Her shoes made soft clicking sounds on the crystal floor. The walls around her were made of some kind of clear material that showed the stars outside. She could see ships from hundreds of different worlds floating in space around the massive station. Taeho Park walked beside her. He was wearing his military uniform, but he had no weapons. The council did not allow weapons in their chambers. Taeho kept his face calm, but Hana could see the tension in his shoulders. They both knew this meeting would change everything. "Remember what we talked about?" Hana said quietly. "Let me do most of the talking." Taeho nodded. "I understand. But if they threaten us..." "They won't threaten us directly," Hana said. "They're too smart for that. They'll make it sound like they're helping us." The hallway opened into a huge round room. The ceiling was so high that Hana could barely see the top. In the center of the room was a raised platform where the council members sat. There were 12 of them, each from a different species. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Hana had trouble understanding how they could even move. The largest council member was Speaker Velthar. He looked like a giant insect, but he walked on 2 legs like a person. His skin was dark green and shiny. He had 4 arms and eyes that looked like they were made of many small pieces. When he spoke, his voice came from speakers around the room because his real voice was too high for humans to hear properly. "Ambassador Kim," Velthar said, "Military Liaison Park, welcome to the council chambers." Hana bowed slightly. It was the correct way to show respect to the council. "Thank you for meeting with us, Speaker Velthar. Please take your places," Velthar said. He pointed to 2 small chairs in front of the council platform. The chairs looked tiny compared to the huge seats where the council members sat. Hana and Taeho sat down. Hana looked around the room and saw other beings watching from galleries above. There were representatives from dozens of worlds. Some of them looked curious, others looked bored. A few looked worried. Dr. So-Young Lee sat in one of the galleries. She was supposed to be there as a scientific observer, but Hana knew she was really there to gather information. So-Young had spent months studying the council's records. She had found things that worried her. Speaker Velthar stood up. His 4 arms moved as he spoke, making gestures that meant different things in his culture. "We have called you here today to discuss an important matter. The galaxy has enjoyed 300 years of peace under council guidance." Hana nodded politely. She had heard this speech before, or something like it. "This peace exists because all civilized species follow council law." Velthar continued. "We make decisions that keep everyone safe. We prevent wars. We stop conflicts before they start." Other council members nodded their agreement. Some of them made sounds that Hana's translator told her meant yes or correct in their languages. However, Velthar said, and his voice became more serious, "We have noticed that some species still keep military forces. This creates danger. Military forces can be used to start wars. Wars destroy peace." Taeho shifted in his chair. Hana put her hand on his arm to keep him calm. "Therefore," Velthar announced, "the council has made a new law. All species must give up their military forces. All weapons must be turned over to council control. All military ships must be destroyed or given to the council." The room became very quiet. Hana could hear her own heartbeat. "This law will make the galaxy safer," Velthar said. "Every species will benefit. There will be no more fear of war. Resources that were used for military purposes can be used for better things." Hana stood up slowly. "Speaker Velthar, may I ask some questions about this new law?" "Of course, Ambassador Kim." "How will the council protect species that give up their militaries?" Hana asked. "What if there are pirates or other threats?" "The council will provide protection," Velthar answered. "We have our own forces. They are stronger than any single species' military. They will keep everyone safe." "And what happens to species that don't follow this law?" Hana asked. Velthar's compound eyes seemed to focus on her more sharply. "All civilized species will follow council law. We are sure of this. But what if a species chooses not to?" Hana pressed. "Then they would be showing that they are not civilized," Velthar said. "Uncivilized species cannot be part of galactic society. They must be quarantined until they learn to be civilized." Hana felt a chill run down her spine. The word quarantined sounded innocent, but she suspected it meant something much worse. "How long do we have to make this decision?" Taeho asked. 7 standard rotations, Velthar said. "That is more than enough time for any reasonable species to see the wisdom of our law." Hana looked around the room again. The other representatives were watching her carefully. She wondered how many of their species had already agreed to give up their militaries. "We will need to discuss this with our government," Hana said. "Of course," Velthar said. "We understand that humans like to talk about decisions. But remember, this is not really a choice. This is what civilized species do." As the meeting ended, Hana and Taiho walked back through the crystal hallway. Neither of them spoke until they were sure they were alone. "They've done this before," Taiho said quietly. "Yes," Hana agreed. "And I don't think those quarantined species are just sitting somewhere waiting to be civilized." Dr. So-Young Lee joined them as they reached their ship. Her face was pale. "I found something in the archives," she said. 47 species have been quarantined over the past 300 years. None of them have ever been released. Hana and Taiho looked at each other. They both understood what that meant. "We need to get back to Earth," Hana said, "and we need to send a message ahead of us." As their ship left the council station, Hana looked back at the massive structure floating in space. It looked beautiful and peaceful, but now she knew what it really was. It was a prison disguised as a palace, and the council wanted to add humanity to their collection of prisoners. The question was, would humanity go quietly into that prison, or would they fight? Hana already knew the answer. The emergency meeting room in Geneva was filled with tension. President Jiwan Nam sat at the head of a long table surrounded by the most important people on Earth. Military leaders, scientists, and diplomats had flown in from every continent. The message from Ambassador Hana Kim had reached Earth 3 days ago, and everyone knew what it meant. Admiral Dongwook Choi slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed through the room. 300 years, he said, his voice angry. 300 years of peace, and they think we've forgotten how to fight? They think we're weak. They don't understand humans at all, agreed General Park Min-ho, who commanded Earth's ground forces. We've been preparing for something like this. President Nam raised her hand for quiet. Let's hear from our scientists first. Dr. Kim, what do we know about council technology? Dr. Young-Soo Kim stood up. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent his whole life studying physics. The council's technology is advanced, but it's not as advanced as they want everyone to think. They use quantum barriers to stop ships from traveling faster than light. They have energy shields that can protect their stations. Their weapons are powerful, but not impossible to defend against. What about our technology? Asked Defense Minister Lee Sang-woo. Dr. Kim smiled for the first time since the meeting started. That's where things get interesting. While other species have been following council rules about technology, we've been developing our own systems in secret. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed a ship that looked unlike anything the council had ever seen. This is the prototype for our quantum displacement drive, Dr. Kim explained. Instead of traveling faster than light, it moves ships between dimensions. The council's barriers can't stop it because, technically, the ship isn't traveling through normal space. Admiral Choi leaned forward. How many ships have this drive? 200 so far, Dr. Kim said. We call it the Ghost Fleet because the ships can't be detected when they're in dimensional phase. Captain Yoonji Shin spoke up from her seat near the wall. She was the leader of Earth's Special Operations Division, a group so secret that most people in the room had never heard of it before today. We've also been working on something else. For the past 50 years, we've been secretly establishing colonies in star systems that the Council doesn't know about. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Even President Nam looked surprised. How is that possible? Asked Foreign Minister Jung Ho-seok. The Council maps space by following major trade routes and known jump points, Captain Shin explained. But space is huge. There are millions of star systems that no one has ever explored. We've been sending small groups to these systems and setting up hidden bases. She pressed another button, and the holographic display changed to show a map of local space. Red dots appeared scattered across the map, each one representing a human colony. We have 43 hidden colonies, Captain Shin continued. Each one is completely self-sufficient. Even if Earth is destroyed, humanity will survive. The room was quiet for a long moment as everyone absorbed this information. Why wasn't I told about this? President Nam asked, but she didn't sound angry. She sounded impressed. Because every president before you decided that what they didn't know couldn't be used against them if the council ever tried to read their minds, Captain Shin answered. This was all planned very carefully. Dr. So-min Park, who was in charge of Earth's intelligence services, cleared her throat. There's something else you all need to know. We've been monitoring council communications for decades. Most of their member species are not happy with council rule, but they're too afraid to do anything about it. Afraid of what? Asked President Nam. The same thing that will happen to us if we refuse their demands, Dr. Park answered. Complete isolation followed by invasion and occupation. The council calls it quarantine, but it's really conquest. Admiral Choi stood up and began pacing around the room. So we have hidden colonies, secret technology, and a fleet they can't detect. What's our plan? President Nam looked around the table at all the faces watching her. These people had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment, even though they hadn't known exactly when it would come. Our plan is simple, she said. We're going to say no. And then? Asked Defense Minister Lee. And then we're going to show them what happens when you try to force humans to do something they don't want to do, President Nam answered. She turned to look at Admiral Choi. How long would it take to activate the Ghost Fleet? They're already activated, Admiral Choi replied. They've been on standby since Ambassador Kim's message arrived. Captain Lee Hyunwoo is in command of the fleet. He's waiting for orders. And our colonies? President Nam asked Captain Shin. Ready for Phase 2 operations, Captain Shin answered. Each colony has volunteers prepared to carry out missions throughout council space. President Nam nodded. Dr. Kim, how long before the council realizes we have technology they don't know about? Not until we use it, Doctor, Kim said. Our ships look like standard human vessels from the outside. The dimensional drives are completely internal. Good. President Nam stood up. Then here's what we're going to do. Ambassador Kim will return to the council and give them our answer. While she's doing that, we'll position our forces for what comes next. She looked directly at Admiral Choi. I want the Ghost Fleet to begin Phase 1 operations immediately. Don't attack anything, but I want our ships in position around every major council facility. What about the colonies? Asked Captain Shin. Begin intelligence gathering operations. I want to know everything about council defenses, communication systems, and military capabilities. But stay hidden for now. Foreign Minister Young raised his hand. What if the council tries to negotiate? They won't, said Dr. Park. According to our intelligence, no species has ever been offered a second chance once they've been marked for quarantine. President Nam walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people were going about their daily lives not knowing that their world was about to change forever. There's one more thing, she said, without turning around. We're not just fighting for ourselves. Every species that the council has bullied or conquered is watching what we do. If we win, we give them hope. If we lose, nothing changes. She turned back to face the room. I don't know about all of you, but I've never been very good at following orders from bullies. Admiral Choi smiled grimly. None of us are, Madam President. That's why we're human. The meeting ended with everyone understanding their roles. As the participants left the room, they carried with them the weight of humanity's future. In 7 days, Ambassador Kim would return to the Council with Earth's answer. The Council expected humanity to surrender like every other species had done. They were about to learn that humans were not like every other species. Ambassador Hana Kim stood in the same crystal chamber where she had been just 1 week ago. This time the room felt different. The council members sat in their high seats looking confident and relaxed. They expected her to bring good news. Speaker Velthar's compound eyes focused on her as she approached the center of the room. Ambassador Kim, we trust you bring humanity's acceptance of our law. Hana took a deep breath. Speaker Velthar, honored council members, I bring humanity's official response to your demands. She pulled out a formal document and held it up so everyone in the chamber could see it. The United Earth government has carefully considered your request. After much discussion, we must respectfully decline. The silence in the chamber was complete. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the entire room had stopped breathing. Speaker Velthar was the first to recover. I'm sorry, Ambassador Kim, could you repeat that? We decline, Hana said clearly. Humanity will not surrender our military forces to the Council. The other Council members began making sounds of shock and confusion. Some spoke in languages that Hana's translator couldn't handle. Others just stared at her like she had grown a second head. This is impossible, said Council member Threx, who looked like a large bird with scales instead of feathers. No species refuses Council law. We do, Hana said simply. Speaker Velthar stood up, his forearms waving. You don't understand what you're saying. This is not a request. This is law. We understand perfectly, Hana replied. We're saying no. In the observation galleries above, representatives from other worlds watched in amazement. Dr. So-Young Lee, still pretending to be just a scientific observer, used a hidden device to record everything that was happening. Council member Xiphon, who looked like a walking tree with eyes, leaned forward. Perhaps humans need more time to understand. We can extend the deadline. Time won't change our answer, Hana said. We will not give up our right to defend ourselves. Speaker Velthar's voice became cold and threatening. Then you leave us no choice. Humanity will be quarantined until you learn to be civilized. We expected that response, Hana said. We're ready for whatever you do. What happened next shocked everyone in the chamber. Speaker Velthar pressed a control, and alarms began sounding throughout the station. Council forces immediately began moving to surround Earth's solar system. But on Earth, Admiral Dongwook Choi was watching the Council fleet approach on his command screens. He turned to his communications officer. Send the signal to all Ghost Fleet units. Begin Phase 1. Lieutenant Commander Jin A. Oh, press the activation button. Across space, 200 human ships that had been hiding in dimensional phase suddenly appeared. They didn't appear near Earth, though. They appeared near Council military bases, supply stations, and communication centers throughout the galaxy. Council Admiral Gixtor was commanding the fleet surrounding Earth when his aide rushed up to him. Sir, we're receiving reports from all sectors. Human ships are appearing everywhere. That's impossible, Admiral Gixtor said. Our quantum barriers prevent faster-than-light travel. How did they get past our defenses? We don't know, sir. They just appeared out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Commander Hyunwoo Lee was aboard the Earth defense ship Indomitable, watching Council ships try to figure out how humans had suddenly appeared behind their lines. Phase 1 is complete, he reported to Earth. All units in position. What are your orders, sir? Asked his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sung-Ho Kim. We're not here to destroy anything, Commander Lee replied. We're here to send a message. Target their communication arrays and supply depots. Disable, don't destroy. Across the galaxy, human ships began precise strikes on Council facilities. They weren't trying to kill anyone or blow up entire stations. Instead, they targeted specific systems that would cripple the Council's ability to coordinate their forces. Lieutenant Minna Park commanded the stealth destroyer Silent Thunder. Her ship appeared next to a major Council communication station and fired a single precise shot that knocked out the station's main transmitter. Before the station's defenses could respond, Silent Thunder disappeared back into dimensional phase. Major Chan Woo Song led a squadron of fighters that appeared inside a Council supply depot. His ships disabled the depot's cargo handling systems and disappeared again, leaving behind confused Council workers who couldn't figure out what had happened. Back on the Council station, Speaker Velthar was receiving reports of attacks throughout Council space. How many human ships are there? He demanded. We don't know, replied his military aide. They appear, attack, and vanish. Our sensors can't track them. This is impossible, Speaker Velthar shouted.
Humans don't have this kind of technology.
Dr. So-Young Lee, still sitting in the observation gallery, smiled to herself. The Council had made the same mistake that bullies always made. They had assumed that being in charge meant they were the strongest and smartest. On Earth, President Ji-Won Nam was watching reports from the Ghost Fleet operations.
How are our casualties?
She asked. 0, reported Admiral Choi. Our ships are hitting their targets and getting out before the Council can respond. The dimensional drives are working perfectly. And Council casualties? Also minimal, Admiral Choi replied. We're being very careful to avoid killing anyone. This is about sending a message, not starting a war. Captain Yoonji Shin entered the command center with new reports from the hidden colonies. Our intelligence teams are gathering massive amounts of data on Council operations. It turns out they're not as organized as they pretend to be. What do you mean? Asked President Nam. Many of their member species are only cooperating because they're afraid, Captain Shin explained. Their military is strong, but it's spread too thin across too many systems. And their technology isn't as advanced as they want everyone to think. Back in the Council chamber, Ambassador Hana Kim was still standing calmly in front of the panicking Council members. Reports kept coming in of human attacks throughout their territory. Stop this immediately, Speaker Velthar demanded. Order your ships to withdraw. I can't do that, Hana replied. I'm just a diplomat. I don't command military forces. Then contact whoever does. Hana pulled out a communication device. I'll be happy to relay any message you want to send to my government. The Council members looked at each other desperately. This wasn't supposed to happen. Species were supposed to be afraid of them. Species were supposed to surrender when threatened with quarantine. What do you want? Speaker Velthar finally asked. We want to be left alone, Hana answered. We want the right to defend ourselves. And we want you to stop threatening other species. That's not how the galaxy works, protested Council member Threx. Maybe it's time the galaxy worked differently, Hana said, as reports continued to come in of human ships appearing and disappearing throughout Council space. It became clear that something fundamental had changed. For 300 years, the Council had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Now, for the first time, they were facing a species that refused to be afraid. Dr. So-Young Lee watched the Council members argue among themselves and realized something important. The Council wasn't just angry about humanity's refusal to obey. They were scared. They were scared that other species might start asking questions. They were scared that their carefully built system of control might fall apart. And they should be scared, she thought, because that's exactly what was about to happen. Dr. So-Young Lee sat in her small quarters on the Council station, staring at the data she had found in the restricted archives. Her hands were shaking as she read file after file. The truth was worse than anyone on Earth had imagined. She activated her hidden communication device, one that used quantum entanglement technology that the Council didn't know existed. The signal would reach Earth instantly, no matter how far away it was. This is Dr. Lee, she whispered. I'm sending you everything I've found. The quarantined species. They're not just locked away somewhere. They're gone. Completely gone. On Earth, President Jiwan Nam received the transmission in the Emergency Command Center. She read through the files with growing horror. The Kalari had been a peaceful species that loved art and music. They had refused to give up their small defense force. The Council had quarantined them 20 years ago. According to the secret files, their entire species had been relocated to work camps. Their planet was now a Council mining operation. The Zentaurians had been brave warriors who refused to surrender their weapons. They had been quarantined 50 years ago. The files showed that their population had been broken up and scattered across different Council worlds as forced laborers. Their children were taken away and raised to be loyal to the Council. File after file showed the same pattern. Species that refused to obey were not just punished. They were erased. This changes everything, President Nam said to Admiral Choi. We're not just fighting for our freedom. We're fighting to prevent genocide. What are your orders? Admiral Choi asked. Contact Ambassador Kim. Tell her to broadcast what we've learned to every species in Council space. It's time everyone knew the truth. Back on the Council station, Ambassador Hana Kim received the message from Earth. She looked at the data Dr. Lee had gathered and felt sick to her stomach. But she also felt something else. Determination. She activated the emergency broadcast system that tech specialist Jae-Min Oh had secretly installed in the station's communication network. Within seconds, her voice was being transmitted to every Council world. Every space station and every ship in the galaxy. People of the galaxy, Hana began. My name is Ambassador Hana Kim of Earth. I'm speaking to you now because you have the right to know the truth about your Council. In the Council chamber, Speaker Velthar and the other Council members watched in horror as their own communication system was used against them. They tried to cut off the transmission, but tech specialist O had made sure it couldn't be stopped. For 300 years, you have been told that the Council protects peace in the galaxy. Hana continued. You have been told that species who don't follow Council law are quarantined until they learn to be civilized. This is a lie. On dozens of worlds, billions of beings stopped what they were doing to listen to the human ambassador. In the Etherian home system, The graceful energy beings who had always trusted the Council gathered around communication devices. On Kresh Prime, the warrior clans that had surrendered their weapons listened with growing anger. The truth is that quarantined species are not kept somewhere safe until they change their minds, Hana said. They are enslaved, scattered, and destroyed. Their worlds are taken. Their children are stolen. Their cultures are erased. Hana began reading from the files Dr. Lee had found. She named the Kalari, the Zentorians, and dozens of other species. She described what had happened to each of them. She provided dates, locations, and detailed records of Council crimes. On the Etherian homeworld, Elder Lemira felt her energy form flicker with rage. The Etherians had always believed the Council was wise and just. Learning that they had been helping to cover up genocide made her feel ashamed and angry. On Kresh Prime, war leader Thakmor smashed his fist through a metal wall. His people had given up their weapons because they trusted the Council. Now he learned that other warrior species had been enslaved for refusing to do the same thing. Throughout Council space, the reaction was immediate. On some worlds, riots broke out. On others, governments began emergency meetings. Everywhere, people were asking the same question. If the Council could do this to other species, what would stop them from doing it to us? But there is hope, Hana continued in her broadcast. Today, humanity has shown that the Council can be resisted. Our ships are moving freely through Council space, and there is nothing they can do to stop us. We are not attacking innocent people. We are not trying to conquer anyone. We are simply showing you that the Council is not as powerful as they want you to believe. Captain Sijin Han, commanding the human ship Defiance, was monitoring Council communications near the Etherian system. She reported to Earth that Etherian government channels were full of urgent messages. The Etherians were demanding answers from their representatives on the Council. Major Bo Kyung. Lee was leading intelligence operations near Kresh Prime. His reports showed that the Kresh military leaders were in emergency meetings. They were angry that they had been tricked into giving up their weapons. The truth is, spreading, reported Captain Yoonji Shin from Earth. Our hidden colonies are picking up communication chatter from dozens of worlds. People are asking questions that the Council doesn't want to answer. On the Council station, Speaker Velthar was in a panic. He called an emergency meeting of all Council members. We must stop this immediately, he said. If the member species lose faith in us, our entire system will collapse. How do we stop it? Asked Council member Threx. The humans have technology we don't understand. They can appear anywhere and broadcast anything they want. We use the ancient weapons, said Council member Xiphon, the ones we've kept hidden since the early days of the Council. Those weapons could destroy entire star systems, protested another Council member. If we use them, we'll prove everything the humans are saying about us. If we don't use them, we'll lose control of the galaxy, Speaker Velthar replied. Dr. So-Young Lee, listening from her hiding place, sent an urgent message to Earth. They're planning to use some kind of ancient weapons that can destroy star systems. On Earth, President Nam called an immediate meeting with her military commanders. How long do we have before they can deploy these weapons? Unknown, replied Admiral Choi. But if they're desperate enough to consider using planet killers, we need to act fast. What about the other species? Asked President Nam. Are any of them ready to join us? Captain Yoonji Shin checked her reports. The Etherians are demanding a vote to remove their representatives from the Council. The Kresh are arguing about whether to start rebuilding their military. At least 12 other species are holding emergency meetings. That's not enough, President Nam said. We need to give them something more. Something that proves the Council can be beaten. She turned to Admiral Choi. It's time for Phase 2. I want the Ghost Fleet to target the Council's military command centers. Not their communication systems or supply depots, their actual command ships. That's a significant escalation, Admiral Choi warned. Once we start attacking their military directly, there's no going back. There was no going back the moment we said no to them, President Nam replied. The question is whether we're going to win this fight, or become another file in their secret archives. As human ships throughout the galaxy received new orders, the nature of the conflict changed. They were no longer just sending a message. They were showing the galaxy that the Council's military could be defeated, and on dozens of worlds, billions of beings were starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they didn't have to be afraid anymore. The council chamber that had once been filled with the confident voices of rulers was now chaos. Emergency reports streamed in from across the galaxy. The Etherian government had officially withdrawn from the council. The Kresh clans were rebuilding their military. 17 other species had declared they would no longer follow council law. Speaker Velthar stood at the center of the chaos, his forearms waving frantically as he tried to maintain control. "This is temporary," he insisted to the remaining council members. "Once we demonstrate our true power, the rebellious species will remember why they fear us." But even as he spoke, more reports arrived. Human ships had attacked 3 major council military bases, disabling their command systems and leaving their fleets unable to coordinate. The attacks had been surgical and precise. No one was killed, but the message was clear. The council's military could be beaten. Ambassador Hana Kim stood calmly in the middle of the panicking council members. She had been trying to leave the station for hours, but the council had refused to let her go. Now she watched as their carefully built system of control fell apart around them. "You have done this," Speaker Velthar accused, pointing all 4 arms at her. "You have destroyed 300 years of peace." "We've revealed 300 years of lies," Hana replied. "There's a difference." Dr. So-Young Lee slipped into the chamber, no longer bothering to hide her true purpose. She carried a datapad containing evidence of everything the council had done. "The galaxy knows the truth now," she said. "You can't put that knowledge back in the box." On Earth, President Ji-Wan Nam watched the reports streaming in from across the galaxy. The revolution was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been loyal to the council for centuries were now demanding independence. "Ma'am," said Admiral Choi, "we're receiving a message from the Etherian Elder Council. They want to meet with us to discuss forming a new galactic government." "What about the Kresh?" asked President Nam, war leader. "Thakmor says his clans are ready to fight alongside us," reported Captain Yunji Shin. "He's also apologizing forever, trusting the council in the first place." President Nam smiled for the first time in weeks. "Send messages to both governments. Tell them we'll meet to discuss a new way forward. But first we need to deal with the council's ancient weapons." The weapons Speaker Velthar had mentioned were real. Deep in the council station's core, systems that hadn't been activated in 300 years were coming online. These weapons could destroy entire star systems, turning planets into dust and stars into black holes. But engineer Wu Jin-cho had spent years studying council technology. When Dr. Lee sent him the location of the weapons, he already knew how to disable them. "The weapons use quantum resonance to trigger stellar collapse," he explained to the team preparing to assault the council station. "If we can disrupt the resonance field, the weapons become useless." Captain Bo Ra-Yang led the cyber warfare team that would infiltrate the station's computer systems. "How long do we have?" she asked. "The weapons need 6 hours to charge," Engineer Cho replied. "We have to move now." The final assault on the council station was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of a massive fleet attacking from outside, small teams of humans appeared throughout the station using their dimensional technology. They moved quickly and efficiently, targeting specific systems while avoiding civilian areas. Captain Yang's team reached the main computer core just as the ancient weapons finished their startup sequence. Her fingers flew over the control interfaces as she worked to shut them down. "I need more time," she called to her team. Lieutenant Tae-Young Park held the corridor against council security forces. "You have all the time you need," he replied, firing precisely aimed shots that disabled the guards' weapons without killing them. In the weapon control room, Engineer Cho found the quantum resonance generator. It was a massive machine that hummed with dangerous energy. One mistake and it could explode, taking half the station with it. "Steady," he whispered to himself as he carefully disconnected the power systems, "just like we practiced." Meanwhile, in the council chamber, Speaker Velthar was trying to activate the weapons manually. He pressed control after control, but nothing happened. "Why aren't they working?" he demanded. "Because humans are better at breaking things than you are at building them," Ambassador Hana said. The chamber doors opened, and President Ji-Wan Nam walked in, flanked by Admiral Choi and a small security team. They had arrived on the diplomatic ship New Horizon, but they weren't alone. Behind them came representatives from 47 different species. Elder Lumira of the Etherians floated beside war leader Thakmor of the Kresh. Ambassador Silvera of the Zephyrians walked next to Commander Drexen of the Corvallis. Species that had never worked together before were now united in their opposition to council rule. Speaker Velthar, President Nam said formally, "By the authority of the Free Species Alliance, you are under arrest for crimes against sapient life." "This is impossible," Speaker Velthar protested. "The council has ruled for 300 years. You cannot simply remove us." "We're not removing you," Elder Lamira said, her energy form glowing brightly. "We're voting you out." War Leader Thakmor stepped forward. "The Kresh clans withdraw all recognition of council authority." One by one, the representatives of the allied species formally withdrew from the council. Within an hour, the government that had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries ceased to exist. "What happens now?" asked one of the remaining council members. President Nam pulled out a document that had been written by representatives from dozens of worlds. "Now we try something different. We call it the Terra Accords, a new agreement based on cooperation instead of domination." The Terra Accords were simple in concept but revolutionary in practice. Instead of one central government controlling everything, each species would govern itself. Disputes would be settled by voluntary arbitration. Trade and cooperation would be encouraged, but no one would be forced to participate. Most importantly, every species had the right to defend itself. No one could be forced to give up their military or their weapons. Captain Yunji Shin coordinated the peaceful transition of power throughout the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet, which had appeared so mysteriously to attack Council forces, now revealed itself as protectors of the new order. The hidden human colonies became meeting places where different species could learn to work together. Dr. So Young, Lee began the massive task of documenting Council crimes and finding survivors of the quarantined species. Some could be rescued and returned to rebuild homeworlds. Others had been scattered too long to return to their original homes, but they could start new lives as free beings. Ambassador Hana Kim stood in the rebuilt assembly hall 6 months later. The room no longer had a high platform where council members could look down on everyone else. Instead, it was arranged in a circle where all species met as equals. "The galaxy is not perfect," she said in her speech to the new assembly. "There are still conflicts. There are still problems to solve. But for the first time in 300 years, those problems will be solved by cooperation, not force." She looked around the room at representatives from hundreds of worlds. Some were species that had been part of the old council. Others were newly discovered civilizations that had been hiding from council authority for centuries. "The council made one critical mistake," Hana continued. "They believed that order could only be maintained through fear. They thought that if people weren't afraid, they would fight each other." She smiled as she looked at the diverse group of beings working together in the assembly. "Today, we proved them wrong. We show that when people are free to choose cooperation, they usually do. We show that the strongest force in the galaxy is not fear, but hope." As the assembly session ended, Hana walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. Ships from dozens of worlds moved freely through space, no longer afraid of council patrols or quarantine threats. Tejo Park joined her at the window. "Do you think it will last?" he asked. "Nothing lasts forever," Hana replied. "But this is better than what came before. And when problems arise, we'll solve them together." They watched as a human ship departed for one of the outer colonies, carrying supplies and new settlers. Earth was no longer humanity's only home. Humans now lived on hundreds of worlds, working alongside other species to build something better. The Council had tried to make humanity surrender. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy that surrender was never the only option. Sometimes the best choice was to stand up and say no, even when the odds seemed impossible. And sometimes when you refused to give up, you discovered that you weren't alone after all.